And welcome to Two Girls in a Pod. I am Sharon.
I'm Christy.
Oh, hope all of you are doing well. Exciting times. One of the things I think part of whether it's our professional or personal life or whatever, there's an evolutionary process that takes place. I think sometimes when we're looking at that evolution of where we're going, it can be scary and exciting at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that way.
Yeah.
We're really looking at our business. This podcast is part of our coaching business. So we have Path to Empowerment, which is our coaching, which we love the coaching piece of it because that's really about the evolution of people looking at their success. What do you feel is successful? What do you think will make you happy? And above all else, I always say, what resonates with you and what makes you happy? What do you have passion about? Those kind of things.
And a lot of times I think people don't know. That's part of one of the biggest problems, I think, when we look at having that personal development and growth and that a lot of times we don't know what needs to change and what we want to pursue.
And I think that's really the big thing is that we self-sabotage, we get in the way of ourselves. And also, I think because it's just scary, because it's like, what direction do I take? What if I take this direction? And, we've taken multiple directions and we're still in this evolutionary process. And we're looking at how do we evolve even our podcast? How do we evolve and change and morph it into those things that we really want, So that's a huge thing. And I feel like we're at that place where we're like, when you're on the diving board, you look down, but it looks so far.
Mm-hmm. I remember that in swim lessons. In fact, I went back down the ladder.
Hell no, I didn't do the dive.
Well, they said we had to, and I remember standing up there and looking down in that big, deep pool and all that pool equipment and those big tubes, and I thought, "You want me to jump off this in there? No, I'm gonna get hurt."
So you never dived?
I didn't dive.
Well, you know what? Maybe it's not for you.
Learned how to swim, but I didn't dive.
But I think that's what it is. It didn't resonate with you.
Oh, definitely not.
No warm feelings of, or with that good excitement,
No.
just fear.
Yeah. It held me
How old
back.
were you?
Oh God, I don't even know. I was young.
Okay. But I think those are the things. I always love this about people when they're always thinking about the next thing. How do I do something better than I did before? And I think even with our podcast, we went from recording on our phone to then getting equipment and getting an office, a place we could have our studio and stuff. And it's just that evolutionary process. And sometimes it's like, does it work out? Sometimes it does really well, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's not a matter of beating yourself up. It's a matter of saying, okay, then what do I do differently? How do I evolve into this? And, we're really working to evolve into the coaching because Path to Empowerment is really important to us as well. And underneath our Path to Empowerment, we have what's called Mentally Prepared for Success.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of our thing. It's like, I think a lot of times people have an idea of what they might perceive as successful. Like maybe their success is getting married and having a home and a family. Then they get married, have a home and a family, and then they're like, that didn't have quite the bang that I thought it would.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we're living other people's lives, all those kind of things. And that's what I really love about the coaching is helping people have those aha moments and those moments where you can see that them able to see that they're evolving.
Exactly. And it has to happen on that interpersonal level in order to make those changes. And I feel like that is our main focus with Mentally Prepared for Success. There's a lot of things that get in our way. We think it's stuff that's outside of us, but it's learning to identify the stuff that's inside of us that's actually preventing us from reaching those goals.
And, it's just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of crap. You know what I mean?
It's all there's so many behaviors that we do that are they're learned over time and we do them without thinking.
Absolutely. And once again, we've talked about this. Our brain likes a pattern of behavior. But not only does our brain, but our body. And, when we realize that they're not separate, that's a huge thing. And I think we talk even therapeutically, when we talk about certain things, we're talking about changing the brain, how the brain neurotransmitters are working. But we also have to understand that there's other things that are reinforcing that, like all of our body memories and all of those things. We have five senses. We incorporate things into those senses and then we stay stuck. We might appear say, oh, yeah, I can do this intellectually. But then we will keep getting those little things where we're always sort of like, wait a minute, why is this happening?
Mhm. Subconsciously, we like slip right back into responding the way that we always have. And in doing that, we're creating this incongruency because we know we're not happy with a certain situation, but we don't realize that it's because of our learned pattern of behavior that we are actually reacting in the same way. And so we're getting the same result every time. So if we could figure out that piece of it, bring that part into our awareness, that's where that mentally prepared for success comes in.
We were talking, one of our clients this morning, and one of the things we were even explaining to them is that even for us, it's practice. And that I think is that practice and consistency that really helps because trust me, we have practiced a lot, all the stuff that's layered, all that stuff that's holding us back. We have practiced that a lot.
Mhm. People don't realize that it's even in our everyday lives that that repetition is what has to happen to strengthen the muscle to be able to utilize the skills that we learn. Because you can learn a new concept, but unless you put it into practice daily, it's not going to stick, it's not going to stay, and it's not going to have the effect that you want.
We always talk about if you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly.
Language is a huge one. If you don't practice language, it has to be reinforced. And when I have kids who are in taking language, they're like, "Why do I have to go to language every day? I don't have to go to math every day. I don't have to go to science." And because, honey, because it's something new. And with math and reading, we just do it. It's an automatic response to us now. Language is not your primary language is. However, if you're learning a secondary language, it's the same thing. It's like you got to practice and practice and practice until when you're doing it, you don't even have any idea you're doing it because it becomes so much a part of you. But we do that even when we're having a relationship. We talk about communication and why it's such a big thing. When we're on this thing of evolution, we have to learn that we have to communicate differently because we have to communicate our needs and wants differently in order for the person who's hearing to truly hear them and understand the value and importance of them. But we get so caught up, what you talk about layering, when you see those couples who, or friendships, it doesn't matter what the relationship is, parent child, doesn't matter. They have the same conversation over and over again. And it's because in your head, you're already having, oh, I know I'm going to say this and she's going to say this. And then, so guess what? You fall into that pattern.
Mhm.
And then we wonder why nothing's changing because we're doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
Yeah. And you're caught in a rut and you don't realize it.
Or I love that. Well, I tried it and didn't work. How many times did you try? Well, twice. Did you try walking 2 times and you were done? No, we're not one and done.
Mm-mm. It takes that consistency, that consistent repetition to build that muscle to be able to use it effectively over and over.
Oh, and it even takes more when you have those layer upon layer of stuff you've been doing for years. The body and the brain are wanting to keep it, and we up the ante always to get that same physical response, even if it's not a good one.
Right. It's just because it's comfortable. It's just what we know.
There's something comforting in what we know, even if it's does not feel good.
Yeah. Even if afterwards you're like, I wish this was different.
Mhm. So that's the thing, and even for us, it's how do we stop the repetition? And that's something that we practice all the time. And as we're looking at this new evolution of what we're doing with our business and stuff, how do we evolve? Because we have to evolve based on what is it somebody's wanting. You can't sit there, I mean, it's kind of like if you live in Alaska and if you want to go open up a ice cream shop, maybe it might not do as well as if you're in South Florida and you open up an ice cream shop,
Yeah.
you know. They probably have ice cream. No, but you know what I mean? It's like, how do we stay aware of what's going on? And, for us, gratitude is always first and foremost, always, because
Which takes repetition as well.
Yes, to get into that because we are so used to looking at what's not working in our lives. So we will talk constantly about, oh, well, gas is too much, my food bill. I mean, it's all of the stuff and it is happening. But then what happens is once again, we're reinforcing all that stuff that's already underlying.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting there and we're just adding to that and we're building that muscle really, 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 really good
Mm-hmm.
in order to change it. When we realize, oh my God, I am so grateful that I do have food to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I have electricity. I have plumbing. Now, who doesn't like plumbing? Now, I
Exactly.
think on a daily, people could have gratitude just for plumbing and tissue paper.
And electricity. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there are so many things that we think that we're grateful for things, but there are so many things that people are taking for granted. And that's really been a prevalent thing with there's been a lot of power outages and things like that. And I always think, man, I am so grateful where we have a dwelling to take shelter in, and we have air to keep us cool in the summer and heat to keep us warm in the winter. And, just all of those things. There are so many things that unless you take the time to really look at, you just take for granted.
Yeah, it's like it's almost owed to us
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And even, when your utility bill comes in, you can sit there and gripe about it, or you can say, I am so grateful I have utilities. I'm so grateful I have electricity. I'm so grateful I can keep my home warm. And when we do stuff like that, then when we pay that bill, there's not that negativity and that angst that comes with it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know?
You change the perspective, it makes a huge difference. And it'll start to spill over into different areas of your life. You'll start to see things very differently when you look at what you have.
One of the other things that, and the reason that gratitude is so important is because once again, our brain doesn't know what's happening now or if it's going to happen in 5 minutes. There's no time. Time is something that's created outside of us internally.
Mm-hmm.
You can have gratitude for those things like, oh, I'm so grateful that I passed that test on Friday. Then your brain, what it's doing is your brain kicks in and says, oh, okay, so when you study, I'm going to really retain, or I'm going to do everything to help you retain and help you study. So it's this relationship you start having with the brain and the body. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. You're reprogramming the brain to see those things that are advantageous to you. And it develops over time that ability to do that in other aspects of your life.
I always think it's interesting because when you look at like people like Einstein talked about gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Nikola Tesla, they understood that these things were important.
Yeah.
And when you're able to have gratitude, I think what it does is it opens up so many possibilities. It is part of that evolution that we have. When we evolve into gratitude, we realize all things can be possible.
Mm-hmm. I think that as you practice it, it starts happening on that subconscious level, and it changes your perspective in a way you never knew possible.
And, I always tell people when we're talking about this is something we start our day with gratitude and we end our day with gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
We have gratitude statements. And, when I'm working with clients and they implement gratitude, they will come back and say, oh my God, I feel different. I don't understand why. But because we stop getting in our way.
Mm-hmm.
We give the brain permission to find those possibilities, to do all those things.
When you focus on the gratitude, I feel like that it creates space within your mind for you to be able to see other solutions that you would not have been able to see before because you were in such a high tension space that you couldn't see any way out.
Exactly. And I think when we talk about bringing stuff into the awareness, it's kind of like you're sitting there and you say, oh man, I think I want that new Toyota Corolla. I liked it, the new hybrid or whatever. And you're there like, man, you don't even see them. But then as soon as you say it and you want it in a certain color, that's the color you see. And that's the car you see. It's not that those cars weren't there. It's just that we are oblivious to things until we put them into our awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what gratitude is we put that into our awareness. And when we do that too, when we have gratitude, we are less likely to say and do mean things.
Right.
You know what I mean? If we're grateful, and I find that, and through social media, when we have all these social platforms, just how people can really dig into people and insult people and do that and not understand that if that person on the other end is reading it, that's impacting them.
Mhm.
Hopefully it's not, but unfortunately, for the most part, it really does. And we do a disservice to people when we feel like we're there. And I always tell people, how is that relevant to your life?
Mhm.
Well, what do you mean? You're saying these things about this situation. Is it relevant? Do they pay your bills? Do they live with you? Do they love you? Do they nurture you? Well, no. Then why is it important for you to say mean things about it? It's not.
Mhm.
But it's that lack of gratitude for the fact of whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So it's how do we switch that? And I think we switch it through that. And that's something that has been part of our evolution. It's something I'm very grateful for in our evolution.
I'm grateful that we have both been on this journey. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is when you're in a relationship with somebody and you're having growth and the other person isn't looking at that.
Exactly. I always encourage people, if you're doing something and it's about your evolution, invite that other person on the journey with you.
Mhm.
And then if they choose to come on it with you, they do. And if they don't, then you see how that plays out.
Mhm. And that can be really in any kind of relationship. I
Friendship,
mean, yeah.
any of them, any relationship.
Mhm.
And I think that's the whole thing about it. Gratitude is a way in which we communicate. So once again, it gets back to that communication piece as well. You have to know how to even communicate gratitude because gratitude is a work in a negative.
Yes, and a lot of people struggle with that, and it's really interesting, but it does take practice because the mind, it seems like you come from this negative place a lot of the time. And so some people will say, I'm grateful that I don't do this anymore, or I don't have that anymore. And it's coming, that is
I don't
an
want to be that person. I'm
yeah,
not going to be that person.
the the brain doesn't get that. So it's like, well, what do you want to be then? This is what I know how to be. So, that has to come into play. You have to focus on what it is that you do want when you're formulating your gratitude statement.
Once it's like when I'm doing an assessment, one of the questions I ask is, what is your goal? I don't want to be sad anymore. Okay. Okay. But what is your goal? What do you want to be? I don't want to be sad. Okay. Your brain doesn't know that. Neither do I. Do you want to be melancholy? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be joyful? Do you want to just be okay? Yeah, I don't content. I don't know what that means.
Mhm.
So goals are the same thing. So goals and gratitude are very similar. You have to know what it is I want, not what I don't want.
Mhm.
So then it'll be like, oh, I want to be more comfortable in situations when I'm out and about, or I want to laugh more and be joyful, or that I can help you with.
The brain knows how to embrace that when you tell it what you want it to do.
When you tell it what you don't want to do, it does that really well too. And it does it on a subconscious level in a different way. Once again, when we're evolving, there's all these little things, and there's these words that we use. And when we're doing stuff, I'll tell people the words we use really change the outcome.
Yes. People don't realize the power of the words that they're using even in their inner dialogue.
Mhm. So I can't sit there and say, oh, I'm so grateful so and so loses their job. No,
Yeah.
we can't do those things because it's not a good intention.
Right.
And when we have gratitude is when we meditate. You meditate with intention and you have gratitude with intention.
Mhm.
And then when you have gratitude statements, what it really does is then it starts helping you to realize what it is you're trying to evolve into.
Mhm.
Do you understand? Because when I say I don't want this or I don't want that or whatever, but if I sit there and I say, I am so grateful for my healthy mind, body, and spirit, using that as an example, then you start thinking, well, what would make me healthy?
Mhm.
Maybe it's the way I'm eating, or maybe or whatever it is.
It gives your brain clues as to how it can make that happen when you start focusing on what it is that you do want. And that's one of the gratitude statements that we use almost well, I think every single day. We are always, I'm so grateful for our healthy mind, body,
Body
and
and
spirit.
spirit.
And we say it for our friends and family.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's the thing with gratitude, it can extend outside of you. And that's why it's so important to us. And that's why it's so important to what we do in our coaching, but what we do just in our daily lives. But it's also important how we communicate. If you've listened at all to this podcast, you know I talk a lot about communication. It is the foundation of everything, 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 everything.
Yes.
And sometimes it's, even when we're having those difficult relationships, it's saying, regardless of what is happening, I'm still so grateful you're a part of my life.
Mhm.
Because then that also takes us away from petty stuff that we're doing. Because sometimes we just get caught up in a lot of stuff. And sometimes even when we're saying those things, it's really not about that person.
Mhm. It's that we get so caught up in an emotion when we go to those places where that we feel like we've been wronged or something like that. And when we get so tied up in that emotion, we can't think of anything else.
Hmm. But that's that evolution. And like I said, it doesn't feel right at first sometimes, because even sometimes something that is good for us doesn't feel like in alignment. What do you mean you want me to eat broccoli? I don't like broccoli. No kind of thing. Or those kind of things. And then it's like you try it. And this has been something that I think is so interesting with you is you did not like fruit.
Mm-mm.
You really didn't like eating healthy.
No, not really. I didn't grow up eating healthy, really.
So how ingrained is that in your whole subconscious and stuff?
It was a complete change, and it was very, very gradual that it's had to happen. I mean, I'm just now aware that I like way more fruits than I used to, and
Fruits, vegetables.
yeah, I mean, I've liked vegetables for a long time, but it's definitely been a process. Slowly over time, I've been able to weed out things that weren't necessary because I was replacing them with other things. And it took some time to change my palate, but you can do that.
Well, and I think even on as we're evolving, it's not a matter of taking away something, it's a matter of implementing something. It's a matter
Yes.
of, if I'm gonna decrease this, I'm gonna increase this.
Hmm.
Because you don't want your body to go into, I mean, it's not like you can go in and say, okay, clean slate, we're just gonna do all of this. The body will go into a panic and say, oh, no, you're not.
I'm going to hang on to every little thing just to fulfill what I need. Yeah, it'll do that. And I think that becomes a huge problem with people. A lot of times they're just going to cut everything out cold turkey. I'm not going to eat sugar anymore or that kind of thing. That has to be a process when you've been used to that for so long. I mean, I was all about milk chocolate. I love milk chocolate. And I had to slowly get rid of that. I ended up switching to dark. It was a gradual thing. I switched to dark, and I had to switch to a dark that wasn't a high percentage of cocoa because it was too bitter for me. Those are the healthier ones, but I had to switch to something that didn't have a very high cocoa content. So it was still probably not the healthiest choice. Obviously, it wasn't a fruit or anything like that. And then eventually I could switch off of that and go to a higher cocoa dark chocolate, and it's just been a process. You can change your palate over time. Now, I don't even have dark chocolate hard, it's not very often, but it is such a process, and we have to have patience with ourselves in understanding that.
Well, and once again, understanding that was built up in you over years.
Yeah.
I mean, she would go into chocolate withdrawal.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm there like, God, please let us have a piece of chocolate. And then you're right, that evolution, that piece of that evolution has been a process with you. It's been, and it's so opposite. I am not really a sweet eater. So that was really interesting with her when she's there, like, we have chocolate and we have, and they're like, okay. Now I eat a little bit more, but not a whole lot. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're eating it, I'll have some with you, but it's not when I sit there usually and say, oh man, let's go get that dark chocolate or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that it was even being patient with you. And when you're in relationships, you have to be patient with those people as they're evolving and changing, you know.
Mhm.
You were a little moody at first, but once again, this is like an addiction.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And because it's like an addiction, it's going to have some of those same characteristics. I don't know if that's what it was like for you.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you just have to, like I said, be patient with yourself and change things gradually over time. And maybe it's not going to be, like I said, I'm sure I could have gone and said, No chocolate." I don't think I would have been successful if I had done that in that way.
And that's what I tell we can do baby steps
Mhm.
because I think when we do those little baby steps and we feel that accomplishment, it builds. Your confidence starts to build. The more your confidence builds, the more we're apt to make changes.
Yeah.
And I have clients, they struggle with gratitude statements. How would I say a gratitude statement for this?
Yeah. We have had friends that will
Friends too,
text and say, "I need a gratitude statement for this."
because I know what I don't want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They throw that negative in there when they're trying to formulate the gratitude statement, and it really the brain just attaches to that negative piece.
Mhm. Or they'll say, "Well, I want this, but I don't know how to put it in a gratitude statement."
Mhm.
So we do a lot of that. So I think that's why it's such a big passion for us as well. And because we have seen results from it. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Whether it's in the coaching or with my private practice,
Mhm.
we have just been able to see a lot of change with that. So that's why it's important. But we're all evolving.
Yep.
There's when somebody comes in and I'll say, "Well, how was this week?" Same as last week. I said, "That's not even possible." "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, some had happened. Your hair grew, some changed." "Oh, well," and then as I say that, then they're like, "Oh, well, I did this or I did that." But we
Mhm.
get once again, it's that routine, that monotony of whatever we're doing. We get stuck in it.
Mhm.
And so instead now I'll say, "What were you grateful for this week?" And then they'll come up with something.
Yeah. And sometimes when you start to do the work and then when you're in the moment, you may not even realize that it's happening. But at the end of the week, you talk with them, you're able to reflect on it, and then you can see where there are some changes. And once you
Absolutely.
start to identify those, it makes you feel like you can maybe do one other little change.
And I think that's what's really cool. And, as we started this, we're in this evolutionary process with our business, our coaching business. And we like the name Path to Empowerment because it really is about the empowerment of the individual.
Mhm.
It's each person will define what they feel is empowerment to them. And that empowerment then leads to whatever it is that they desire.
And it really is, it's a path, it's your journey, and it's ever evolving. You're always going to have that. It's a lifelong journey.
And I think even like we said, we're in this evolutionary thing, and it's one of those things where it's like, oh, we should do this, we shouldn't do. You oscillate back and forth, but I think if you keep the goal, whatever that is that you're wanting, if that becomes that thing, it's those steps you'll take to get there. And I think that's that whole piece of that.
Mhm.
So one of the things we did was we started a new venture as part of
Yes.
our this is part of our path to empowerment. So we just published, this is our coloring book collection. It's called Grateful Beginnings.
Mhm.
It was a way in which we said, how can we do this to help children, when they're little, know what gratitude really is and how we can do this. So this one is our first one. It's called Imagination. And what a wonderful thing that kids have is imagination, and why we should be grateful for a child's imagination. As adults, why we should be grateful for a child's imagination. And the reason I say that is because that imagination is what drives them and gives them ideas and all of those other things. And it's so important.
Yeah, and the coloring books just give different ideas about things to be grateful for, like our oceans, and they're really fun. I mean, they've got a lot of different
Pictures, I don't know. We
pictures
can't
in
get that
there.
really
I
good
don't
on
know if
camera.
you can see that really well, but there's like all kinds of things to be grateful for. And this just kind of opens the door for that conversation to happen with kids.
It's a series of 10. We have imagination, oceans,
Day at the Zoo,
zoo,
Ways to Travel,
yes,
which talks about all forms of different
planes, trains,
transformation. Uh,
automobiles, and
excuse me,
balloons.
transportation.
Yeah. So that's really cool. What was the last one you just put out?
The last one I just uploaded was for my pets.
Yes. Who does not have gratitude for their pets, man? So it's gratitude for our pets. We'll have our next one coming out. We'll be grateful for our military because we work in a military community. Colorado Springs has a lot of military posts here. And, we are just so grateful for it. I work with this population and these kids, their parents are in the military and the sacrifices they make as a family and stuff. So grateful for that. Um,
And it's very difficult on kids. Parents have to be gone for a long period of time and that,
and
but
move around and
yeah. So there's things are always changing for them and that, but I think that if we can help them understand the importance of the job that they do, it
mhm.
probably helps them in their journey.
And I think also understanding that they also learned that even through when we do PCS and stuff, they get to see a lot of different things, and a lot of them will talk about that experience as well. So, and they have they do have gratitude for the travel because they get to see other countries. Sometimes they get to meet people from all different walks of life and stuff. So it has so many positives to it, and
Right.
so being able to identify those things as well. So this is our newest
Thank you.
evolutionary piece of this journey that we're doing. And we appreciate people if you can get on to Amazon and check them out. Right now, for whatever reason, you can't put in Grateful Beginnings and it pull it up. You have to put in our names. And so mine is Sharon Abeta. Last name is Abeyta.
Mhm. And Christy, which is Christy, Banta, Banta.
And yeah, take a minute. We'd love it if you take a minute and check them out and start maybe thinking about gratitude on a daily basis because it really is important and it's part of the journey.
Yes, and it has some great health benefits to incorporate gratitude, and there's a
Yes.
little bit about that in the reading in the back of the coloring book.
Yeah, a little story to kind of help out. And those are the things though, is how do we, for us, this evolutionary thing is how do we promote that positivity? And if you've been listening to our podcast, you know that we really are about people becoming their true authentic self and to grow and shine and just be the best absolute version you can be of yourself, minus all of that stuff that's buried in that subconscious that keeps getting in our way. Because it's a struggle and
Mhm.
it can be a struggle. And I think that's why we love the piece of the path to empowerment. That's path2empowerment.com. Oh,
Yes.
okay. So it's path and then number two, empowerment .com. And it's another way of helping people to bridge where they are to what they see or who they potentially see themselves. And I love that we get to be part of that bridge, those stepping stones to them reaching that. That's something that we're very passionate about is
Mhm.
helping people to realize those things that really matter to them and where they find that they thrive.
Well, and to help them to realize the things that are holding them back, that are
Mhm.
preventing them from getting to the place that they want to be so that they can feel free.
Absolutely. So once again, we're evolving and we're learning as we go. And I think what's really cool and what we've really learned on this journey too, as we're evolving into all this, is when we don't understand it or know it, we have learned to ask people who do. And
Mhm.
that's in our coaching, that's what it is too. When people need that extra encouragement and somebody outside looking in to help, as coaches, that's what we do.
Yeah.
You people step out and say, "Oh, geez, I want this, but I don't know how to get there," or "Give me the skills to help do that." And that's what we do. And from business to personal relationships, everything in between that anything that gets in the way, that mental piece that gets in the way of us making that happen, whether it's relationship, business, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So those are, like I said, we're evolving, but we're also learning, we've learned early on that if you don't know, find the people who do know.
Mhm.
That's why coaching is so important to people is because if I don't know how to do it, but I have the vision, I need somebody to help me to bring that vision to life. Whether, like I said, relationship doesn't really matter. But those are kind of the things. And I think that's why it's such an important thing because it comes with that connectivity that we have. We always talk about relationships, building those connections and stuff. We get to do it through that. And hopefully we're going to do it through the coloring books as well. We're so excited about it, and we're so grateful for everybody who's already purchased. And
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
yes,
you. We appreciate it so much.
absolutely. And we are so grateful for everybody who listens and for the people who have supported us and continue to support us in our endeavors. That's really that connection piece, and just extreme gratitude for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you've heard something that you liked today, we would love to hear your feedback, or if you have questions. We love to get a conversation going. You can find us at twogirlsinapod.com. You can subscribe to that website, and you would get an email every time we post a new episode. You can also find us on Instagram or Facebook, wherever you like to hang out online. We are under Two Girls in a Pod Life's Journey. The coaching piece is pathtoempowerment.com, and we would love to hear from you.
And we still have our YouTube adventures, Two Girls in a Pod. And we're actually, want to talk about venture evolving. We're actually going to revamp that a little bit. And it's just going to really be more about our adventures.
Mhm.
It's going to be about our travel and stuff like that, and just things that we like to do and things to that nature. So it's going to be, once again, evolution happening here, people.
Yeah, you'll be noticing some
I have
shifts.
some growing pains.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe. Those things are super important. Commenting, engaging with us is really important as well.
Yes.
So as always, we thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to being back next week. You guys have a wonderful week. Bye.
Bye.